And why everything pops on. Welcome, welcome. I'm Dr. Paul Dyer. Welcome to Talking with the Sarge. We are here every Thursday at 6 p.m. live, coming to you where we can see all your questions and your comments when you send them through your email and you like our page and you like it. And you've been listening into the podcast. You can catch all through your podcasts through iHeart, Apple Podcast, Tunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Just put in Talking with the Sarge and we will pop up with Bridges Live. Hey, how you doing, James? It's been a week.
Yes, yes. How you doing? How you feeling?
We were doing good. We like to talk about police and police reform and all those things because, again, most people don't know. If they haven't heard the show, shame on them. You're a 33-year police veteran. You've been in this business a long time. You love mentoring kids. And we have a we problem, and we keep wanting to point a they problem. Are we ever going to get? I mean, just recently with this Baltimore City, with this mayor and this Brandon Scott and this, what's the place over there where the rich people don't want to pay them?
Oh, the Fells Point incident.
Fells
Yeah,
Point. That's right.
Fells Point.
So
Yeah,
now, rich white people are mad. Now he's going to do something about crime.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
So prior to that is the hell with all the other poor people. He didn't really care about crime. But now that they're complaining and paying taxes, he's going to really do something. That was never the case.
Well, I mean, you would have thought all the incidents that happened in the Inner Harbor would have gotten their attention because that's if you pay attention to that area, that's pretty much dried up. A lot of the Fortune 500 companies that had offices and buildings there are starting to move.
So we want to talk about crime. It's not just how to fix crime, but our relationship, we've always said, with the police department has been a little bit obscured, a little bit of tension. We talked about last week about the history of policing
Hmm.
and where the tendencies came over with Tennessee. So let's talk about that because that was fascinating. When you told me about the felony, the shooting felony, right?
Yeah.
The fleeing felony, right? And how that was what really people were going off of from like ever. So
Yeah.
if you were fleeing your felony, they had the legality to shoot. It
Yes.
wasn't about he may not have a gun it was a fleeing felony. You were running, I can shoot you.
Yes. Yes. And so, yeah, that was finally not repealed but modified in 1985. And then when they modified it, it became a violent felony. So it had to be like an armed carjacking, an armed robbery. There had to be a violent crime where there was a weapon used, and the criteria for that changed, where the person had to be a threat or imminent threat to the public at large.
So let's go with that. I want to talk because I think people are talking about what's a threat to a police officer. A threat to a police officer, is it different to a threat to an old lady or a school teacher? I mean, a threat is a threat is a threat, or is it different?
Well, that's where a lot of the controversy
Right.
has come into play. You have a lot of people who have pushed the envelope with that, and they've used that as an excuse to use force, or they've used as an excuse to cover up a bad decision that was made. Um, Threats are basically, it's common sense. It's a threat to you would not be the same thing as a threat to the average person because you're a grandmaster. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So with someone of your credentials, you could hardly say that someone who's like 5 foot, maybe 110 pounds, who's drunk, would actually be a match for you sober. So that would not give you the right to break his jaw. You know what I mean? It's the frame of reference for any force or threat would have to be the potential for harm and that person's ability to carry it out versus your ability to stop it.
But now for police officers, we're gonna go, and again, it seems like we have to do this because if we don't, they're gonna say, Sergeant James said. Sergeant James is not speaking for every police officer on the planet. Let's get that
No,
straight. Or every jurisdiction of police officing in the planet,
no,
right? He's not a superhero or a Marvel comic. Okay.
no.
So, but when we talk about police officers being trained against a threat,
Yes.
how is that training taught? Is it training against is it only with a weapon, or is it with, like you said, is it against me? But they don't know me, they don't know my skill set. So they have to surmise, I don't want to tangle with, like, I'm a 5'5" officer or
Mhm.
female, and I don't want to tangle with this person. So that
Yeah.
person is a threat.
Well, by the mere fact that it's a 5'5" female who may have average abilities and average strength, that would give her a wider range of options in subduing the person. Where I would have a much more limited. I'm 6'2", 215. So and I have some martial arts training. I'm not a grandmaster by any stretch of the imagination, but I can handle myself. So my field of options would not be nowhere near the wide array of options that she would have available.
So is this the factor they bring up in court, or is this because obviously everyone at the police academy who's on the police force has different skill sets.
Yes,
They're right, but us as public, we don't know that.
right.
Is that something in a perfect purple world? Is that a
Mhm.
possible thing that we can have all police officers on some form of a level that they could handle X, Y, and Z? So anything above that is a threat. Is that
Well,
possible, or is that just impossible?
no, it's already that way because we've been given defense mechanisms. We have those batons, we
Hmm.
have pepper spray, we have now the taser. You can go hands on, and of course you have the firearm, and there's backup. So um, typically these things don't really come into play unless there's civil litigation. It doesn't. Very rarely would it ever come up in court on a criminal level unless the officer is a defendant. But typically, when an officer is in an altercation and they place someone under arrest, whatever force you use on that person doesn't come into play in court unless the officer's been deemed to have gone overboard.
Now, last night's show on You Be the Judge, we watched this clip on "Do Not Talk to the Police."
Mhm.
It was with this law professor, this 30-plus-year detective out of Virginia, and they
Mhm.
really gave this test of do never talk to the police, right? No matter
Right.
what, it will be used against you.
Mhm.
I found that very upsetting, knowing that most innocent people will want to talk because they feel like they've done nothing wrong, but more likely their words are probably going to end up getting them in trouble.
Well, I've been to different seminars, and I've heard different talk, and I've heard lawyers give that type of advice out. And it's well meaning, and within the spirit of what they're trying to say, it makes sense. But the problem that we have with people is that the law is what I say, like the Bible. Everybody puts their own spin on what they read in the Bible,
And interpretations.
and they interpret it the wrong way. And I'll give you an example. One of the long going history excuses that I've gotten when I've arrested people for disorderly conduct, the first thing they say is, "Well, I have my right to freedom of speech. I can say what I want." And that's the problem when you give out that kind of advice. You have to ensure that the people that you're giving that advice to really understand the purpose or the benefit behind that legal advice. Because there are times where I've had people who refuse to speak to me and then end up getting them locked up because I had no choice. I'll give you an example: a traffic accident where obviously see that the person is slightly impaired. I smell the odor of an alcoholic beverage coming from the person. I see the eyes are bloodshot and glassy, and the slow impaired movement.
So now you have probable cause, right?
So that's reasonable. That's reasonable suspicion.
Okay, reasonable suspicion is different than probable cause.
Yes.
Okay.
That's one step below probable cause.
Okay.
Now, here's the problem with that. When you refuse to talk to me and give me information regarding your sobriety, now you've made that probable cause. And now, because you're not talking to me and you're not giving me any information, now you're going to jail, because I can't just let you go, because now it's a safety issue for not only you, but the public at large.
But here's the thing. Now, attorneys say don't talk, right? So am I getting arrested or am I being detained? Because that's not the same, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay. So am I being...
If you're being held, you're not necessarily free to go. You're being held based on a preliminary investigation, and the officer is usually getting information regarding whatever incident they're responding to.
So am I being arrested or am I being detained? Which one is it? I didn't talk to you. You smell, you have reasonable suspicion.
Yes.
Right? I am being arrested.
Right. You're being detained.
Okay.
Because there are a number of factors. Just because someone appears to be intoxicated, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are. There are a lot of factors that go into it, and that's why you have to give them the roadside test. That's the reason why you have to ask the questions. But if there's someone there who,
not saying,
in my opinion, has been drinking, I just can't let you go at this point, because all I have is what I see. You may be a diabetic.
Right.
You may be on some type of medication that would release that type of odor from your breath. And you may be lethargic because you're suffering from the side effects.
Right.
And maybe you didn't go home quick enough. Someone who's suffering from the side effects of medication, I wouldn't arrest them. I would call a family member and ask them to come and pick them up, or I would, give them a ride. If we weren't too busy, I would give them a ride myself. But if you're not going to say anything to me, you're not leaving me any choice, because I don't know why you are the way you are. And so at that point, I have no choice but to take you into custody, because I can't let you go, because if you hit somebody after I let you go, now I'm liable.
But I think that's okay. I know sometimes being detained is an inconvenience, and it is troublesome, and many people can lose jobs because of the inconvenience that's happening. But I'd rather deal with the inconvenience and being detained than being arrested for something I've said.
Yes. What they're typically speaking of when these attorneys give out this advice, they're usually talking about criminal matters.
Okay.
They're usually talking about things that are a little bit more serious. But the problem is the average citizen doesn't know the difference.
Right.
They don't have the legal background to make that discernment to say, okay, now I know what you're talking about. They're just going to simply say, oh, my lawyer said don't talk to you. My lawyer said don't talk to you. Okay. Well, here's the next step.
Yeah, here's your next step. Call a lawyer. So let's get back. Let's get back to the weapon and
use of force.
Use of force. I know they're trying to go to where everyone has the tools to detain or to put down someone. And I've said this, I've taught at academies and I've taught at security agencies, and there's a lot of people that are just not technically there. They're just not there, right? And it bothers me that I understand what type of training I've been through, gone through, and teach, that people are just not proficient. They're not even proficient even in their gun weapon. They're let alone proficient in their hands or the baton. And that's why we see these things on TV that they are not taking down a person because it seems like they are not proficient.
And that's why we need more standardized training statewide. We have departments that pretty much do their own thing, and that's not good, especially when you have neighboring agencies. I've been on incidents with agencies that were connected to ours, And some of the things that I've seen them do, it's been like earth shattering. And I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? And, training is very important. And if police reform is going to be effective,
Training.
they're going to have to create a budget where the officers are adequately trained.
I heard somewhere, I don't know if I read it. Yeah, I did read it. I'm trying to remember what police force they want all their officers to be at least a blue belt in jujitsu.
That's not necessary. That's going overboard. That's not necessary. You're talking about, jujitsu. Jujitsu is one of the most complicated martial arts there is. It's effective once you become proficient at it, but you know for yourself. Now you're talking about grappling, and you're talking about holes and all of those things. I would never want a bunch of my officers to be trained on that level, because now they're breaking bones, and now they want to grapple on the ground, and that's not safe, because now you're wrestling on the ground with someone, and you could be disarmed, or someone could come up behind you, and the only way you should be grappling on the ground is if they got you on the ground, and and you're trying to come out of a bad situation. But as an officer, you always want to be on your feet.
I agree. I tell people, when most people, if you don't know, he's right. I am the Grandmaster of Martial Arts. I hold several high belts in many things, 7th degree jiu-jitsu. It's just, I'm all over the place with my technique and proficient. As an older man, I'm not getting on the ground.
No, not at all.
I'm not getting on the ground. The only person I'm going to get on the ground with will be my wife.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
or my grandkids. I'm not getting on the ground.
Yes.
I'm not getting on the ground. Because they're friends. I know what I was like when I was young, and there's a lot of stomping going on when you're on the ground.
Yeah, oh yes. Oh yes.
And we're not talking knee slapping dancing. We're talking stomping. So
yes.
It made me think of something. In the 70s and 80s, I'm thinking back to my youthful days, there were always 2 officers in a car. I don't know, throughout time, you start to only see 1 officer in the car. Now, maybe that had to be with budgets or expanded territories or new fancy cars. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But every time there's a stop, another car, they don't get out of should they wait to get out of the car until a backup comes? Or how? Because I think they're getting in trouble because they're by themselves.
No, they're getting in trouble because they're not following their training, or they weren't adequately trained to begin with. One of the things that I see from a lot of the incidents that are taking place, officers are supposed to be trained observers.
Right.
You're supposed to be able to see things that the average person doesn't see, and you're supposed to be able to make those decisions based on your observations. And I've seen a lot of officers. I could show you video after video, and I can point out the different things that the officers have done that they shouldn't have done. And if they didn't know, then it's shame on the department for allowing them to be on the street that way. Because there's not always going to be a time when you can have backup with you. When you're pulling a traffic stop, you're pulling it for a variety of reasons, and there's not always going to be a time when you have backup available. Okay. But you have to make that stop based on the way the person's driving. I can't allow someone who I believe to be impaired to swerve all over the road. I can't just sit there and listen to the radio and say, oh, well, I'm not going to stop him because I need backup. No, I have to make that stop for the greater good of this community.
Well, what about just like a simple broken taillight stop? There are cops still getting shot for broken taillight stops.
Well, yeah, again, that comes down to the observations. When you're approaching the vehicle, you should be observing how many people are in the vehicle. You should be looking to see if the trunk is secure. You should be looking at the vehicle and walking up slowly to make the observations that you need to see how this is going to be, the behavior of the driver, the behavior of the people that are in the car. But a lot of officers, they'll just get up to the go and get out of their car and they'll just go walking on up and they'll approach the driver and they never pay attention to the things that are going on. I'll give you an example, and this is something that went wrong the other way, meaning the officers didn't get hurt, but it caused a big hoopla. And that was the thing in Virginia, where the two police officers stopped the serviceman who was
the lieutenant.
Yes, a lieutenant in the Army with a brand new Chevy Tahoe.
Right.
Everybody noticed the obvious, but from my expertise, they should have already known that that vehicle wasn't stolen, because someone who steals a brand new vehicle is not going to take their time to go to a lit area and stop their car and stick their hands out the window, unless they're giving up. But there's no chance of that. Most of the time they're going to run. When someone's not stopping right away, you should be able to tell the difference between that person buying time to figure out what to do, or they're pulling over to find someplace that's safe or lit, or they're so inebriated that they don't even realize you're behind them and they're just not paying attention. And as a police officer, you should be able to notice the difference between three. So by the mere fact that that Tahoe was brand new, and just because you did not see the temp tag, that doesn't necessarily automatically give you the right to think it as stolen. Now, there's nothing wrong with you checking, because I've stopped plenty of cars to make sure that they weren't stolen.
Right.
But I didn't go with my gun out, because the way they pulled over and the way they stopped and the observations that I made, I realized, okay, he didn't steal the car. But I still go walking up and say, hey, this is why I stopped you. I don't see a tag. And they'll say, oh, it's a temp tag. It's in the window. Okay, well, in Maryland, they don't do that. So I didn't see it. Okay, you're free to go. Have a nice day. Everything those officers did was over the top.
It was.
In Virginia.
Yeah.
It was way over the top. I'm glad that they just pepper sprayed him and not shot him. And
because they could have shot him.
Yes. And so it was ridiculous from the beginning, because no one who steals a car is going to go to a lit gas station and stick their hands out the window.
And here's the other conflicting thing. Your hands are out the window, like his hands are out the window. They said, don't move, but get out of the car.
Right.
Until someone teaches us how to do that, I don't understand how that really works.
That's because you have someone who is what I call in contempt of cop mode.
Gotcha.
So you have police officers who feel like you should do what I tell you to do, and if you don't, you're going to suffer the consequences. And you have to relax to the degree that you can, so you can make a decent observation, and so you can be in control of the situation. If you're not in control of yourself, you've lost control of the situation regardless. And that's what they did. They lost control of the situation. There was no reason for them to tell him to get out of the car that quickly. He already had his hands up, and all they had to do was just talk to him, and that would have solved so many problems.
I'm watching my son over here in the back of the studio that I have here and everything like that. And you met him, and it brings to mind when he got his license. He was about ready to get his license, and we put up this mock station in the living room. Yeah. And we went over this training, and this was, well, he's 21, about ready to be 22. Yeah. So this was years ago. And he got five. Well, anyway, we went over this mock training about how to get pulled over. And he says, Dad, why are we doing this? I said, because I don't want you to get shot. He goes, yeah, right. I don't want you. And it's sad that we have to teach our people how to get pulled over by a police officer, because I don't want them to mistake you reaching for your registration. They're thinking you're going for a gun, right? Or because they don't know what you're going for. They don't know why your hands disappeared from here to here, and all the clowns you got in your car, they're going, it's a school bag. They're going in the school bag. They don't know none of it. They don't know anyone in this car. They don't know what is what, who is who, and people are moving around doing all that. That would make me nervous.
Right. I wish more parents would teach their children safety when it comes to that. I told all my kids, if you get pulled over, just turn on the interior light and put your hands on the steering wheel and wait for the person.
And don't move.
Yeah, just stay right there, and just say good evening, good morning, be polite, be respectful. Being combative or disrespectful is not going to get you out of whatever it is that you're facing. It's going to make matters worse.
Almost talking like, like your hands on the wheel saying, my stuff is in the glove compartment. Can I go get it?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it's, because, and then you're probably thinking, do I have anything in the glove compartment that doesn't need that doesn't need
I
to
would
be
hope that you wouldn't.
right? You're like, I
And keep your registration somewhere else.
But when it comes to use of force, it's different for different people. You actually mentioned that the developing being a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, because it does take a little bit at that level, it's a little bit over the top. But where can we find this happy medium? Because I really believe there's some. So let's go with this. In the perfect purple world, you take over a police station. How do you assess these new officers? You don't know, but you're the chief, you're the captain, you're the HNIC, whatever the hell you want to call it. How do you evaluate this? There's 20 years on the force, 10 years on the force, 2 years on the force.
Well, we do have a defense, self-defense tactics, and that's what needs to be standardized. And one of the things that I would like to see is that they have training programs where they have officers who are making arrests with combative people, where you have multiple officers versus one officer, and how that plays out. We have defense tactics training, and we teach officers how to handle themselves in certain situations. The problem is, like I know is muscle memory. We only train like once a year. And
not good enough.
Right. If you don't get in a fight for 2 or 3 years, then you're not gonna, unless you practice on your own, you're not gonna remember.
And these officers are not practicing. Majority of officers are not practicing on their own. There are some officers who take their job pretty elitish. I get it.
Yeah.
But the mass. But how about this?
Those are typically your SWAT guys.
Yeah, I have not seen a police officer that has done a shooting with a person that I've seen on video that the police officer looked in shape.
Wow.
I
had to go back and look.
I've looked for some. I'm looking for, I think, a put together officer.
Right.
I'm not talking size and muscular and has to be, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Put together that has made a bad move.
That's a good thought. I didn't pay attention to that one. That was one slipped me. I'm gonna have to go back and check and take you up on that one.
And I hope you find someone be like, oh, he was put together, he just made some bad mistakes. I get that, or this was a good one. But I haven't yet. All these crazy clips and stuff that passes through, I've been like, what stands out at me is that they're not tight.
Well, like I know, the biggest part of war is the psychological aspect.
Right.
And that's something that I've always taught my kids, and I've always taught officers that work for me, that no matter how drunk or high someone is, they don't want to get hurt. No, it doesn't matter. If they think they're going to get hurt,
it changes.
They're going to be changes made. And if you have someone in that mindset who doesn't care, then they've already made your job. Your decision has already been made for you. So you know what you have to do. But by and large, people size you up. Then they size police officers up all the time. And they go, if I put my hands on this guy, he's probably going to hurt me, or she's probably going to hurt me. Now, I think I'll either go the other way or listen to what they have to say.
I agree with that. I mean, it is a mental game. Now, I was also listening to this, and I want you to take on it. And I have an idea because we've talked about this subject before. This caller called up on one of these talk shows on the radio here in the Baltimore area and said the reason why the high crime rate is so high is because those people are not well educated and they're content with living like pigs.
Mm,
It was so.
mm. I mean, you're telling me, and I'm not happy about that comment at all. I like comments like that because it goes to show you that how we have such a great disconnect, because that's one of the most ignorant statements that I've ever heard.
But yet the local radio personality person agrees with him, and then also started to put this on the mayor, Mr. Scott,
Mhm.
about how he handles things. And I was so taken back by their agreement of the conversation of his statement that,
Right.
like you said, it's, I think people have ideas and opinions, and if the people had them on this show and called up, I would welcome them because I want to hear where people are at, because that's where our social systems are at. We're at such a division of being misunderstood.
Think of, you grew up in New York City, right?
Yeah.
Think of the big time drug dealer and the baby mama that you watched, that you knew about, who was notorious.
Hmm.
And let me ask you that. If that was your mother and that was your father, would you be who you are right now?
No.
And that's the part that most people
I'm
that
not
make
getting.
those types, yes. People only operate on the options that they believe that they have.
Hmm.
And when you're surrounded by people who who seem to be affluent, and those people that have what you want are the ones who are dealing drugs, you're going to go and do what they do. I mean, the analogy that I make is that when you're 12 years old and you don't have any money, and you can't get a job because you're only 12, and in Maryland, you have to be 14 before you can get a work permit. And you want nice clothes, and you want to be able to buy food or have spending money, and your mother doesn't have spending money, regardless of what her circumstances are. You got maybe uh, two or three siblings and all, and she's not able to give you what you want. And you see this guy standing on the corner who's dressed nice, and he's always got a pocket full of money. He's got fresh tennis shoes, and he comes and tells you, "Hey, Paul, tell you what, if you stand on that corner for me, I'll give you $100."
Right. Right.
12 years old, $100 is a whole lot of money, a whole lot of money. And if he's telling you, "I'm going to give you $100 a day. You did a good job. I'm going to give you $100 a day. You stand on that corner and let me know when the police are coming."
That's it. That's all
Now,
you got to do.
yeah. So now you're making $700 a week, and you're staying in your own neighborhood, and you don't have to go anywhere. Now school doesn't make sense anymore. Why should I go to school when after school I'm making $100? Well, if I don't go to school, how much is he going to pay me to stay here all day?
Because most people think you go to school so you can learn something so you can get a job. Well,
Yes,
technically, he's got the person has the job.
correct,
So why do I need to go to school?
correct.
No. That's not why you go to school. But that's not what you told me. You said, don't you want a good job when you grow up? Well,
Right.
this is why you go to school.
Right.
We keep misrepresenting what education is. It is to open the brain up to all
Correct.
the mysteries of the universe, not just so
Yes.
you can work. That's
No.
nothing.
And the problem that we have with kids dropping out of high school, that's the most pivotal time for them to define what their adult life is going
Hmm.
to be, because that's when they're exploring. That's when they're trying to figure out what they want to do for a living. College is supposed to help you become qualified to do whatever it is that you want. Now, you may change your major or change your field of study or your ideas when you get into college, but you're still in that process.
Right. You're still learning. You're still opening. You're still moving, and it's moving up here, not just moving on
Yes.
the physical, it's
Right.
moving on the mental. That's where
Right.
the move comes in. That's
Right.
why I disagree with a lot of schools. Well, what's your major? Freshman. What's your major? Well, I don't know. Well, if you pick one, we can streamline your education. Well, I don't want it to be streamlined. I'm here to explore.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'll pick my major when my major finds me. I don't
Yeah.
know where it'll find me because
Yeah.
most people say, well, if I pick this, you can always switch. Yeah. You take one, it streamlines you, take some business degree. Now you're switching over to something else. Half the credits don't transfer. So you're
Right.
like, I wasted 2.5, almost 3 years. Well, I might as well just get this degree
Mm-hmm.
and be finished. And then
Yes.
I'll go try to do something else.
Yeah.
That's a waste of time.
It is. It is. Education is so important to a person's not only, like you said, not only their career field, but it's their outlook on life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the exposure. You know, one of the kids that I mentor, his name's Brandon. He was on the show on the
That's
first
right.
show.
That's right.
He's been to Ecuador. He's been to France. He's been to Holland. He's been to London, England. He's fluent in Spanish, and he's been to Australia. So, and he's going into his senior year at Davidson.
And you're taking some kids to Puerto Rico.
Yes, yes, yep. And so, those are the things that broaden your horizons, and it opens up the field of possibilities for you, because you don't really know what you want to do until you go out and explore. And one of the notions that I cringe when I hear this said is that college isn't for everybody. Well, you don't know that until you go. I'd much rather for you to go to college and drop out rather than, well, I'm not going to go because it's not for me. You know.
How about this? I do believe this. I think college is for everyone, but the right college, you have to find. Not
I
all
agree. I
schools are
can
the
go along
same.
with that.
Not
No.
all schools and states are the same, because I think people don't look outside of their immediate. You know,
Right.
there's a great school in New Mexico. Go there. There's a great
Right.
school in Idaho. You know, or see, there's schools everywhere. There's
Yes.
thousands of schools.
Yeah,
And I'm not
thousands.
talking about these big schools. I'm just
No,
talking
little
about,
college.
just local colleges. You can go anywhere you want. So, yeah.
Well, Anne Arundel County has the distinction of Anne Arundel Community Colleges consistently been between number 1 and number 3 in the nation for junior colleges.
Yep.
And they're one of the few junior colleges that all of your credits will transfer to any school in this country. And so many people, they just bypass. I'm not going there. I'm not going there. You know, and they don't have a clue of what they're passing up.
Mm-hmm. We have. I love this conversation. We're talking to Sarge. You guys can always comment on us or ask the Sarge a question, especially when it comes to a police officer. Again, he can't ask you about for the whole country, but he can give you his take on maybe what you're looking for, maybe help you with an answer. Because until we fix our relationship with ourselves, we're going to always have a bad relationship with anybody else.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if it's a uniformed police officer or the person at the movie theater. You seem to always have an attitude, and it always seems to be they is against the me.
Right.
We have to remove those theys and me's.
Yes.
Because there's only us and we's.
Yes. Yeah, one of the problems that one of the many problems that we face in this is that there's no Planet Cop. Whenever somebody retires or they get fired, we just don't go to some person in the universe and yank them down and tell them, "Hey, hit the street."
Yeah,
you know,
here you are.
The same community that you are in.
Yeah.
They drink the same water. They eat the same food. They go to the same movies, same restaurants. Their kids go to the same schools. We're all in this together. And until the law enforcement executives start changing those things and changing that us versus them mentality, especially in the academy, you can, once again, if you learn to become a trained observer, you can figure out who's for you and who's against you, and you can treat those people accordingly. So, and you can also build relationships with people who have an adversarial attitude toward the police, because you also have to recognize unless you've done something to them, it's not about you. It's whatever past experiences that they've had, or what the experiences that they have read about or heard about, or anything. I've had plenty of people I've had conversations with who would say they can't stand the police, but oh, you're okay. No,
No.
we're all different. I mean, you everything, so um, we have to break down those barriers, and we have to break down those walls, because we, the people, are the ones who are suffering in the end.
That's right. And I teach a lot of emotional sciences, and really what it comes down to, I teach us to not have a false perception based on experiences. I
Yeah,
teach you to understand that your experiences is not your expectation or your ideology of what things are to come. Your experiences are something that has happened, but it doesn't mean it will happen. There's a
correct.
difference.
Yeah, it happened in that moment, and it happened under those given set of circumstances. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen every time a different situation presents it. Meaning, every time you come into a police officer that does in contact with a police officer, doesn't mean your experience is going to be the same every time.
But I do know people, like there's a lot of people who are very superstitious. So I think that's why their brain works that way. I want a scratch off ticket at this gas station, so I'm going back to that gas station with that teller to get a scratch off ticket.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. That is true. Well, the best part about that is either you win or you lose, So
Right.
that's not a big deal for me. But, I just want us to be able to walk away with a decent conversation, or a decent interaction, even if it's an arrest or a ticket or what have you. Just walk away with some type of understanding, not have a result where, one or both parties get hurt.
Well, I'm so blessed. We're cutting this short. We'll be back here next Thursday at 6 p.m. talking with the Sarge James Spearman. I'm Dr. Paul Dyer. Remember, you can catch all our shows here on YouTube, all your social media. And if you have any questions about the show or what we want to talk about, would like to talk about, just contact us. We love to hear from you. You guys
Yeah.
have a stay blessed and safe night. Be safe, be blessed, and be healthy. Thanks,
Thank you.
James.
Have a good night.